My name is Leo. I'm 26, working as a junior architect at a firm downtown. I spend my days designing spaces for other people to live in, but lately I've felt like the walls of my own life are closing in a bit. I've been best friends with a guy named Mark since our freshman year of college. We've been inseparable for years, closer than brothers really. But today's story isn't about Mark. At least, not entirely. It's about a rainy Tuesday that completely shifted the axis of my world. Hold on just a moment before we continue. If this story is touching something in you, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. It genuinely makes a difference and helps me bring you more stories like this one. I also want to hear from you. Write in the comments. Where are you right now? Are you tucked away in a peaceful village where stars fill the sky, or surrounded by the hum and glow of a city that never sleeps? See, I've always had a huge amount of respect for Mark's mother, Elena. She's an interior designer, which gave us common ground right from the start. Whenever I'd go over to their place, I found myself lingering in the kitchen just to talk to her. She has this incredible aura, sophisticated, sharp-witted, and genuinely funny. While Mark and I would talk about video games, sports, or the grind of entry-level jobs, Elena and I would discuss Art Deco trends, the psychology of space, or classic literature. She never treated me like just her son's friend. She treated me like an intellectual equal. And I have to admit, I've always thought she was stunning. She carries herself with a kind of grace that I rarely see in women my own age. Her husband, Mark's dad, is a corporate lawyer who spends more time in airport lounges than he does at home. I always got the sense that Elena was surrounded by beautiful things but starved for genuine connection. So, earlier this week, I had the afternoon off. I decided to swing by Mark's place to drop off a vintage jazz vinyl I'd found for him, an original pressing of a Miles Davis record we talked about months ago. I didn't bother texting first. I just hopped in my car and drove out to their estate, which sits on a quiet hill overlooking the valley. I thought it would be a quick drop-off and a laugh. When I knocked, the house was quiet. The driveway was empty, suggesting Mark was out. But a moment later, the door swung open. It wasn't Mark. It was Elena. She looked genuinely surprised, her eyebrows arching as a soft laugh escaped her lips. She was wearing a simple cashmere sweater and jeans, looking effortlessly elegant even on a lazy Tuesday. "Leo," she said, her smile bright and welcoming. "This is unexpected. Mark didn't tell me you were stopping by." I laughed, rubbing the back of my neck, suddenly feeling a bit sheepish. "He didn't know," I admitted, holding up the record sleeve. "I was just trying to surprise him with this. Found it at a flea market and thought he'd dig it." She chuckled, stepping aside and motioning for me to enter. "Well, bad timing for him, but lucky for me. He's out running errands, grocery shopping for the week, I think, but please come in. Don't stand on the porch." Just as I stepped across the threshold, the sky, which had been gray and brooding all morning, finally broke open. A torrential downpour slammed against the roof, the sound almost deafening instantly. It was as if the weather had waited for me to step inside before unleashing its fury. Elena looked out the foyer window at the gray sheet of rain and shook her head. "Wow, look at that. You aren't driving anywhere in this mess," she said, turning her gaze back to me. There was a playful glint in her eyes, something sparked by the sudden isolation the storm provided. "Looks like you're stuck with me for a while." I nodded, watching the trees sway violently outside, secretly thrilled by the turn of events. "I guess I am," I said, turning back to her. "I hope I'm not interrupting your workflow." "Not at all," she smiled. "I was just reviewing some blueprints for a client. A second set of eyes, especially an architect's eyes, would actually be a relief." We moved into the main living area, a beautiful room with cathedral ceilings and a massive stone fireplace. The sound of the rain hammering against the floor-to-ceiling glass created this heavy, secluded atmosphere, like the rest of the world had just disappeared. Elena walked over to the vintage turntable in the corner. "Since you brought Miles," she said, taking the record from my hands, "we should probably listen to him." She dropped the needle, and the soft, melancholic trumpet filled the room, mixing with the rhythm of the rain. She poured us both a glass of heavy red wine, and we sat on the plush leather sofas, facing each other. The conversation flowed effortlessly. We critiqued the blueprints she was working on, laughing about the impossible demands of clients. But eventually, the conversation drifted to deeper things: ambitions, regrets, the things we wanted out of life but hadn't found yet. I watched her as she spoke, the way her hands moved expressively, the way the lamplight caught the amber flecks in her eyes. She was 52, but she had more vitality and allure than anyone I'd ever dated. "You know," she said, twirling the stem of her wine glass. "Robert, Mark's father, he hates this kind of music. Says it's too chaotic. He likes silence." She looked at me, a flash of vulnerability crossing her face. "Sometimes this house gets so quiet, I feel like I'm living in a museum exhibit. Look, but don't touch." "That's a tragedy," I said softly, meaning it. "A house like this, a woman like you, shouldn't be met with silence." The laughter died down, and a comfortable, charged silence settled between us. She was looking at me, really looking at me, and the air in the room seemed to grow thick with static. The jazz trumpet wailed in the background. "You know, Leo," she said, her voice dropping an octave, smooth like velvet. "You've been awfully quiet for the last few minutes. Everything okay?" Yeah," I stammered, caught off guard by her directness. "I guess I just didn't expect to be spending my afternoon like this. It's nice. Better than nice." She tilted her head, a small, knowing smirk playing on her lips. "It is nice," she agreed softly. "Mark is always so busy these days. And Robert is in Hong Kong for the month. It's refreshing to have someone to really talk to. Someone who listens." Her compliment landed heavy in my chest. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. "I love talking to you, Elena. I always have. You get it. You get me." She held my gaze, and I saw something shift in her expression, a mixture of curiosity and desire. She leaned forward to place her wine glass on the coffee table, and as she sat back, she didn't retreat. She stayed close, her knees almost brushing mine. "I've always thought you were special, Leo," she whispered. The sound of the rain seemed to fade into the background. "You have this intensity about you. It's very distracting." My pulse skyrocketed. "Distracting?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I hope I'm not making you uncomfortable." She hummed, shaking her head slowly. She reached out, her fingers grazing my forearm. The contact sent a jolt of electricity straight up my spine. "Quite the opposite. You're sitting here looking at me like that, it makes me wonder what you're thinking. You're analyzing me like one of your buildings." I decided to stop overthinking and just be honest. The wine, the music, the storm. It gave me courage. "I think you know exactly what I'm thinking, Elena. I'm thinking that I shouldn't be feeling this way, but I can't help it." She stared at me for a long beat, her eyes searching mine. Then, slowly, she closed the distance between us. She reached up, her hand cupping my cheek, her skin cool and soft. I leaned into her touch instinctively, closing my eyes for a second to savor the friction of her palm against my stubble. "Leo," she breathed. I didn't wait. I leaned in and pressed my lips to hers. It started tentatively, a question asked and answered, but the moment our lips met, the hesitation vanished. She made a soft sound in her throat and pulled me closer. The kiss deepened, becoming urgent, fueled by years of unspoken attraction and the loneliness we both carried. I wrapped my arms around her waist, pulling her flesh against me. She smelled like vanilla and rain, a scent that was intoxicating. We broke apart for air, our foreheads resting against each other. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered, breathless, her hands clutching the fabric of my shirt. "Do you want me to stop?" I asked, searching her eyes, giving her an out. She shook her head slightly, a mischievous, youthful smile returning. "Absolutely not." The tension that had been building all afternoon finally snapped. The living room, despite its comfort, suddenly felt too open, too exposed to the large windows. Without a word, she took my hand and led me down the hallway. The house was dark because of the storm clouds, lit only by the occasional flash of lightning that illuminated the artwork on the walls. We reached her bedroom, a sanctuary of soft fabrics and warm earth tones. As the door clicked shut, the sound of the thunder seemed muted, leaving just the sound of our breathing. She turned to me, confident and beautiful, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. We moved together, a tangle of limbs and whispered words. It wasn't just physical. There was a connection there, a shared hunger. The time blurred. I lost track of how long we were in there, lost in the sensation of her skin against mine, the way she said my name, the way the world outside ceased to exist. It was a release for both of us. For her, a break from the solitude. For me, a realization of a fantasy I'd buried for years. Later, we lay side by side, the adrenaline slowly fading into a contented exhaustion. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle, tapping a rhythmic lullaby against the window pane. I had my arm around her, and she was resting her head on my chest, tracing random patterns on my skin with her fingertips. I started, struggling to find the word. Unexpected, she finished for me, looking up with a satisfied grin. But incredible. Yeah, I laughed softly, kissing the top of her head. Incredible doesn't even cover it. I was just about to close my eyes, lulled by the warmth and the peace of the moment, when a sound shattered the tranquility. The distinct, heavy thud of the front door closing downstairs. Then the beep of the security alarm being disarmed. We both froze. Elena sat up instantly, her eyes wide with sudden panic. The blood drained from her face. Mom? I'm home. The traffic was a nightmare. Mark's voice echoed up the staircase. My stomach dropped to the floor. The reality of the situation crashed down on me like a tidal wave. He's back, I whispered, panic rising in my throat. Oh God, he's early. Okay, don't panic, Elena whispered, though her hands were trembling slightly as she grabbed her silk robe from the floor. He can't find you in here. Not like this. You need to hide. Hide? Where? I hissed, looking around the room, frantically. The closet? Under the bed? It felt like a bad sitcom, but the fear was visceral. The ensuite bathroom, she directed, pointing to the door. Go. Now. Take your clothes. I scrambled out of bed, grabbing my jeans and shirt in a messy bundle, tripping over my own feet as I bolted into the bathroom. I closed the door softly, just as I heard Mark's heavy footsteps approaching the bedroom. I pressed my ear against the wood, my heart pounding so hard I was sure Mark could hear it through the wall. I stood there in the dark, shivering, clutching my clothes to my chest. Mom? Mark's voice was muffled now, just outside the bedroom door. I heard the bedroom door creak open. Hey, sweetie. Elena's voice was calm, composed. It was an Oscar-worthy performance, though I imagine her heart was racing just as fast as mine. I was just taking a nap. The rain knocked me out. Oh, sorry to wake you, Mark said. I saw Leo's car in the driveway. Is he here? I held my breath, squeezing my eyes shut. Please don't come in. Please don't check the bathroom. Yes, he is, Elena replied smoothly. He's downstairs in the guest washroom, I think. We were chatting in the living room, and he spilled some coffee on his shirt. A clumsy spill. He went to clean up. Oh, okay, Mark said, sounding completely unbothered. I brought pizza. I'll go set it up in the kitchen. I'm starving. Perfect, Elena said. I'll be down in a minute. Just let me wash my face. I heard the door close and Mark's footsteps retreating down the hall. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding, my legs feeling like jelly. A moment later, the bathroom door opened. Elena stood there, already dressed in fresh loungewear, looking slightly flushed but composed. She held a finger to her lips, her eyes sparkling with a mix of adrenaline and amusement. Quick, she whispered. Get dressed. Mess up your hair, a little less. And splash some water on your shirt so the story holds up. Meet us in the kitchen in 5 minutes. I threw my clothes on in record time, my hands shaking as I buttoned my shirt. I checked the mirror to make sure I didn't look as guilty as I felt. My pupils were dilated, my face flush. I splashed some cold water on my face to cool down and dabbed a wet spot on my collar. When I walked into the kitchen 5 minutes later, Mark was plating pizza slices. The smell of pepperoni filled the air, a stark contrast to the scent of perfume and rain I had just left upstairs. He looked up and grinned. There he is. Mom said you had a coffee disaster. Mark laughed, handing me a paper plate. I forced a chuckle, keeping my voice steady. Yeah, total klutz moment. Hey man, good to see you. Thanks for the pizza. Elena was leaning against the granite counter, sipping a fresh glass of water. She caught my eye over Mark's shoulder. Her expression was perfectly innocent to him, just a mom hosting her son's friend, but I saw the secret hidden there. A subtle, barely there smirk. So, Mark said, chewing a slice. Did you guys get a chance to listen to that record? We did, Elena answered, her eyes locking with mine for a split second. It was very moving. Leo has excellent taste. Told you. Mark grinned, oblivious to the double meaning hanging in the air. We spent the rest of the evening eating pizza and watching a movie. Mark had no clue. He was joking around, talking about his day, completely oblivious to the fact that the dynamic in the room had fundamentally changed. Every time our hands brushed while reaching for a napkin, or when our eyes met during a quiet moment in the film, I felt that electric current again. It was dangerous. It was reckless. It was a betrayal of the highest order, yet I couldn't find the will to regret it. But as I drove home that night, the rain finally clearing to reveal the stars, I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't a one-time mistake. It was the start of something complicated, something hidden, and something I wasn't ready to walk away from. That's my story. It's a precarious situation, I know. I'm walking a tightrope between my best friend and the woman I can't stop thinking about. But sometimes, the strongest connections are found in the storms we didn't see coming. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.